6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 verses to finish up chapter 17, and I almost went into chapter 18. I will move quicker through chapter 18. I may do it in one night, maybe, because I'm just repeating, and I'm irritating some of you. You're giving me looks, you're growling, you're sending me dirty notes. Anyway, so I'll try to be a little bit quicker with that. What we're covering tonight is really about these 10 horns and these 10 kings. And there's something that's a little bit of a mystery about who they are. If you think about it, I don't think there's a single superpower. Is England considered a superpower? Okay. No? Okay. I mean, you're right. I mean, they're a Muslim country. There's not a single superpower on the earth that's run by a king, is there? I don't think there is. Not a superpower. Now, there are a few kings and queens out there. He could, but he's more of a dictator, I think. But all of a sudden now you have 10 kings, and I wonder where the divisions came from, and I saw it. Dr. Ruckman did this, where he divided up the earth into 10 regions. And that's where it came from. I didn't think of that. I knew I didn't. But, and he seems to think that these 10 kings are literally going to rule this world. And they're one with the beast. And so he says, the 10 horns which thou sawest, where verse 12, are 10 kings which have no kingdom as yet. Now, as yet, but where are we at? In verse 11, he's talking about the beast becoming the, of the 7 and becoming the 8th. So I think we're somewhere, I'm just going to take a guess that we're somewhere in the middle of the week when these kings come on the scene. And it looks like if they have one mind in their power, they receive power, I'm thinking these aren't men. I'm thinking these are something else that comes down with him. And Doc has always called them supernatural kings, and I have to agree with him with what I'm reading here. We don't have any real kings down here anymore, but man, who's to say that the spirits of Alexander the Great, or who knows? I mean, there are people coming back from the Lord's side. I mean, you've got Elijah, you got Moses. You may have John the Apostle, because it said that he would prophesy again. You may have the apostles of the Lamb, because it says they will not have gone over the cities of Israel till the Son of Man come. Well, he didn't come. And they covered all the cities, or at least they went out and tried. So there could be a whole bunch of folks that are coming back that are going to, and you say, well, how is that possible? Well, you remember what he said about John the Baptist. What did he say about John the Baptist? That he had what? The spirit of Elijah. Well, who's to say we're not going to have the spirit of Alexander the Great, or the spirit of Genghis Khan, or some other? Who knows if it's not going to be 10 of the worst kings that ever was on the face of this earth, or at least some spiritual representation of that. We don't know. All I know is I believe these are supernatural kings. And look at verse 13. It says, these have one mind. Have you ever known 2 politicians to be in a room that had one mind? Except for Joe Biden. Whoever's in the room, there was only one mind. Okay. Lord, forgive me for that. I couldn't pass it up. But these have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. In other words, they're all in for whatever the beast wants to do. And what we're going to find out is the decision that's made is the craziest thing I've ever. It throws me every time I read through this, of the decision that's made to literally scrap a system that is working for one that will not. And this happens right in the middle. And you're just like scratching your head, like, why? Because what he wants and what the world wants are not the same. What he is promising the world, he is not going to deliver. He wants what he wants, and he doesn't care who he's got to kill to get it, who he's got to sacrifice. They're going to find out who they've been dealing with. Okay, let's look at verse 14. Talking about these 10 kings. And it says, these shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. So you've got these 10 kings representing the Gentile world that are going to be making war against Jesus Christ. No doubt they're the ones that are gathering these armies, whether they're demonic or men or whatever, but they're gathering these armies to fight. Isn't it funny that these 10 kings know exactly who they're fighting against? Somehow I don't think the rank and file are going to know exactly who they're fighting. But these 10 kings do. So the men of earth may be deceived by these supernatural kings. It says the Lamb will overcome them. Of course, they have no chance of victory. Do they know they have no chance of victory? Yes, they know. No chance of victory. You say, well, why do it? Well, this is where the thing gets kind of crazy. And it's the same reason an army will destroy anything of use in a retreat. They know they've lost. They know that what you're doing is denying any prize to the victor. In other words, you literally, it's a scorched earth policy where you just burn everything, destroy everything, ruin everything, so that when they get there, there's nothing left. Now, it's not going to really hurt Jesus Christ too much since he can fix anything. But it's not providing your enemy a prize. And let me read this passage to you in Ezekiel chapter 30. And I've read it before, but it's worth reading again. Verse 30 to 32. And it says, there be the princes of the north, all of them, and all the Zidonians, which are gone down with the slain. With their terror they are ashamed of their might, and they lie uncircumcised with them that be slain by the sword, and bear their shame with them that go down to the pit. So he's talking about going into hell here. And then he says, Pharaoh shall see them, and shall be comforted over all his multitude, even Pharaoh and all his army slain by the sword, saith the Lord God. Strange passage where Pharaoh's actually comforted over the loss of his own army. But then it says, for I have caused my terror in the land of the living, and he shall be laid in the midst of the uncircumcised with them that are slain with the sword, even Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith the Lord God. Now, you might just be scratching your head and just go on reading, but if you had been reading the chapter before, you would have read this in 29 verse 3. Speak and say, thus saith Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith the Lord God. I'm sorry. Speak and say, thus saith the Lord God. I read up to another passage. Speak and say, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which has said, my river is mine own, and I have made it for myself. But likening Pharaoh to a great dragon. And this great dragon, when he sees the multitude being destroyed, even if it's his own army, he takes comfort in it. Well, why is that? Well, he doesn't care about them. He's not some comrade fighting in arms. The devil stands alone. The angels are dupes. They're useful idiots, and so are the men of this world. They're just useful idiots. And you know what useful idiots are good for? To use and to sacrifice. And the fact that the enemy cannot claim them, the fact that they're lost forever, that's his comfort. Every angel that winds up in hell, every man that winds up in hell is one angel and one man that God doesn't have in his kingdom. And this is a comfort to someone who has no fear. This is a comfort to someone who is truly, purely evil. Because he can live with, listen, does he know he lost? Yes. He lost. He knows it. He knew it. I think he knew it. I think he knew it when Judas betrayed him for the 30 pieces of silver, and he watched them take Jesus Christ and haul him off. And he willingly went. And then he hung around for a little while longer. And he said, what is he doing? He expected him, Father, send the 12 legions and wipe them out, and that's what he wanted. That's what he thought was going to happen. He had no idea, because it says, if he had known, he never would have what? Crucified the Lord of glory. But now that that's already happened, and he knows that his fate's sealed, because he can't take possession of the universe, because Jesus Christ has redeemed it with that crown of thorns. He can't take the men that have believed on Christ, because they're saved. Their sins are paid for. He has lost this war, but he's still going to fight a few battles. Why? To deprive God of whatever he can. Also to put himself in that seat that he said he'd sit in over there in Isaiah 14. I mean, to think that this didn't cost God, it did. Cost angels, cost men. There was a payment for it, but it could have been much greater. But pure evil has no regrets, no fear of God, comforted in the loss of their adversaries. I mean, we're talking billions of souls that have been lost to Satan. This is his comfort. And he's comforted in the fact that he was instrumental in denying God these souls. I believe that. I don't know why else he would be comforted in it. The only comfort in it, because he's got, it looks like that he's got to live with them, or exist with them in hell. Yep. But the fact that he put them there listening to their screams, who knows if that might even be a comfort to him throughout eternity, knowing that, well, I don't know about that. That'd wear on my nerves. But he's able to deny God what God wanted, God's original will, what God wanted. He didn't want a third of the angels to rebel. He didn't want man to rebel in the garden. That's not what he wanted. It was not his will. Anyway, and then he says there that they that are with him, talking about with the Lord, the King, Lord of Lords and King of Kings, are called and chosen and faithful. When he talks about the called there, it's referring to those that get saved. Those called have answered. That's how I think about that when he's talked about the called. If you were called and you didn't answer the phone, then you weren't called. Why? Because you never answered. But if you answer the call, you're the called. Make sense? These called have answered. Those that answered are chosen, because he said, when you choose Jesus Christ, then you become chosen by God. And it happens like that. Now, obviously, I'm going to show you a verse here where God knows by foreknowledge, not by making a decision for anybody, but by foreknowledge he knows. But the other thing is that those chosen are then made sinless and are faithful. And look at Romans chapter 8, verse 29. Dig myself a hole here. It's really not that difficult if you just take one term at a time. Romans 8:29, he says, for whom he did foreknow. What's that? Foreknowledge. That means he knows ahead of time something is going to happen. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son. Now, he didn't say predestinate to be saved, did he? He's just talking about predestinated to be conformed to the image of his Son. And that happens after you're saved. That he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he did predestinate to do what? To be conformed to the image of his Son. Them he also called. So the ones he knows that he's predestinated to conform to the image of his Son is the ones he's saved. Why? Because they're the called. They're the ones that have made the decision. And whom he called, them he also justified. So the ones he saved, he justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified. He changed them. He changed them. So they are, the called, the chosen, and the faithful, all because of Jesus Christ. And there's nowhere in there where you take out somebody's free will. It's just that the order that he's given it to you and how he's presented it to you, you have to read it closely. Because this predestinated stuff, they got it in their brain that it has to do with salvation, when not one time the word predestination deals with salvation. It deals about adoption, deals about being conformed to the image of His Son, but it doesn't deal with being saved. Why? Because you get saved, then you're predestinated. Makes sense too. All right. He said in verse 31, what shall we say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? And all that's confirming is that God has the whole process under wraps. Now, once you're the called and you're the chosen, I mean, you got no worries. God's got this whole thing worked out, and you will be conformed to the image of His Son. All right. Verse 15. And He saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. All right? So we have a physical place. That's going to be Rome. I mean, you got Italy sticking out in the middle of the Mediterranean where it says, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth. I mean, you know, you could physically talk about that as the place of Rome, because Italy is sitting right on the Mediterranean. In fact, it's got its boot in the water. And politically and spiritually, though, it's the influence. She influences the nations to do her bidding. I try to get a number, and I may have one here. But you know, when you think of Rome, you only think of this one. You know, it's only like, how many acres did I say it was? 91 acres, something like that. 73 acres. It's not very big. I mean, there's farms around here more acres than that. But they got some guards, and they got a bunch of what do you call them? Cardinals. Use a bunch of cardinals walking around. There's a few priests here and there. You know, you got the Pope, you got all the attendants. But you know, that's a small number compared to what's out there in the world. On the payroll, this is just an estimate, a good guess, about 1.3 million. And that includes all the priests and all the bishops and, you know, all the different groups and teachers and things like that. About 1.3 million. I think that's a low number. It's probably much higher than that. No, worldwide. For 1.4 billion Catholics. That seems like a very low number. But their influence is everywhere. I'll bet you there's 1.3 million lawyers. Oh yeah. They love lawyers. A lot of popes were lawyers. Pacelli, which was Hitler's pope, was a lawyer. So was his daddy. So anyway, I guess it's hard for people to understand is the influence that this harlot's going to have is going to be great. Whereas they look at it now and they're going, they really don't run anything. They run a lot more than you think. But their influence was greatly diminished with the Reformation, with the coming along of the King James Bible. But since the King James Bible has been rejected by the church, her influence is starting to grow again. Have you noticed it? Have you noticed that there seems to be almost a worldwide awakening? And the problem is they're putting a church in that awakening. They're taking events like with Charlie Kirk, and they are bringing the Catholic Church into it. And I'm telling you, we're going to see this thing grow bigger and bigger. Rome is going to have more of a part in the say of countries. She's going to be running practically everything. And it looks like she might even be initially running these kings, but we're going to see something changes. In fact, we'll read that in the next few verses here. But you've got peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. She's everywhere. She's everywhere. And she has had 2,000 years to get everywhere. And she will be a great influence on the kingdoms of this world. In verse 16, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the horn. Now, why would that be? I get to that point and I'm going, huh? Are these 10 good kings? No. But they're 10 kings that hate the harlot. And shall make her desolate and naked and eat her flesh and burn her with fire? Why would these 10 kings want to do? Actually, 10 kings that are under her in authority, they're going to turn around and destroy her. Now, verse 17, for God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. What you've got here is, you've got a situation where there is, and I've spoken about this before, about that 2 seats of authority. And you've got, now think about this, you have this Roman harlot who is running this world. She is the economic engine of this world. We'll find that in chapter 18. All the world is worshiping based upon her. And you have these 10 kings that are in step with her until this point. And what's going to happen is there's going to be this shift. And the only way to explain it is a verse, Luke 11:18, if Satan also be divided against himself, how shall his kingdom stand? Odd thing to say. Why would Satan be divided against himself? Because he's going to have 2 seats. He's going to have 2 authorities. He is willing to take an authority, a seat, and it's actually his seat. She's riding him, remember? She's riding the scarlet color. It's his seat. And what he's going to do is destroy that entire seat of authority because it's now in conflict with the new seat he wants to establish that it's not his. It's God's seat. Now, I know that may seem, I tell you what it's going to look like. This harlot's going to be successful. Go over there. If you read, when we read chapter 18, you're going to see she's very, very successful. She has the whole world practically in her clutches. She has the entire economic system running. I mean, they are getting rich beyond belief. And she is actually the hub of an economic machine that's unbelievable. He throws it all away. He throws her away. He throws the economic thing away. He turns 10 kings against her to destroy her. So why? So he can go over here and sit in a seat in this small little nation with Jews that are already hiding out in Selah. So he can sit on that seat. That's the strangest thing you ever read. And you're thinking to yourself, what in the world? But it's about him, see? He doesn't want any of that other stuff. He wouldn't care if there was one man left on this planet. He could care less, except that he might get some to come and worship him. But after that, what does he do with the Jew? He befriends the Jew when he shows up. But what does he do in the middle of the week? He goes after him to wipe every one of them off the face of the earth. There is no other explanation for that than what I just gave you that I know of, because it doesn't hardly make sense. He said in verse 18, the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. We're going to find out exactly how he gets rid of this city too. Okay. Now I'm going to explain it to you once again in my notes. So at one point, 2 seats of power will exist, one in Rome, where Satan's seat is, and one in Jerusalem. That is where Jesus Christ should sit. The 2 seats will be in conflict till one is destroyed by the other. God has promised her destruction, and his enemies will carry it out for him. That's the thing. Where have I got that verse? Okay, on down through here. All right. And I talk about chapter 18, how insane the move is. Satan trades one political, ecclesiastical world market for a seat in Jerusalem at the expense of a flourishing one a one world kingdom. So you have the political, it's political. The Vatican State is a political entity, full diplomatic power. It's ecclesiastical. It's a state church with worldwide worshipers. And it's an economic conglomerate, worldwide marketplace centered around Rome. And the thing is, it's working. It's working. It talks about all these men that are they're flabbergasted at the fact that it's being destroyed right in front of their eyes, and they're weeping, and I mean, they're mourning the loss. Why? It's really a very simple thing. He's always been trying to climb Mount Zion. He couldn't climb it before, the actual one, so now he's going to climb the one down here. And he wants to ascend the sides of the north. He wants to sit among the congregation in the sides of the north. That's where he wants. He's going to try to fulfill that very prophecy you see back there in Isaiah 14. And for an hour, he might. All right. So it happens when the switch to Jerusalem is made. That'll be somewhere around the middle of the week. He's going to convince them to build, because he's going to confirm the Mosaic covenant. He's going to convince them to build the temple. However it's going to be, whether it's going to be a full-size modern temple or it's going to be the tent. One way or another, man, he's going to get that thing set up. The altar will already be set up at this point in time, been running for 1,040 days. The Lord is working in the hearts of these kings, but not in a good way. There's a verse in Proverbs 21:1. It says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will." In other words, God doesn't have a problem without violating anybody's free will, changing somebody's mind. I think we read something like this in Job, where God comes to a man at night, starts messing with his head, starts putting things in his head, starts putting fears in his head, or something that's put in there where he wakes up and he changes his mind about the direction he's going to go. See, that's when you pray about something, you don't know what God's going to do. I mean, if you think something's going to happen to you tomorrow, well, pray about it tonight, because by tomorrow morning, God could have the whole thing changed. Why? Because he can steer people's hearts. He can change their mind. Especially about their actions. Ezra chapter 6, verse 22, give you two verses that deal with that. Ezra 6:22, "And kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy, and the Lord had made them joyful, and turned the heart of the king of Assyria unto them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of God and the God of Israel," which is one of the verses in the Bible that kind of proves the Assyrian is a title for the Antichrist. And he's going to help them build the temple. He's not stopping Israel. He is helping them, because he wants that. Judas was all excited about the buildings of the temple. Master, look at these buildings. He is just enthralled with them. The man is taken by real estate because he used to own some. Now he doesn't. I mean, he's temporarily leasing it, I guess. But Ezra 7:27, I'll give you this last verse, and then we're done for the night. Ezra 7:27, "Blessed be the Lord God of our fathers, which put such a thing as this in the king's heart, to beautify the house of the Lord which is in Jerusalem." So God can put something in somebody's heart, and he definitely can sway these kings. And these kings are of one mind with the beast, so it's not going to be very hard. They're going to work together. You said, but they're working against mankind. They do not care about mankind. We're the people that are left here that reject Jesus Christ are the useful village idiots that are going to be used for his purpose, and that's it. Bottom line. And if it means the sacrifice of 1 billion of them, so be it. In fact, the more the merrier. The more that take the mark, the more that can't be saved. Okay. But there is going to be a multitude saved. out of the tribulation. Thank God for that. All right. Well, any questions about what we covered? Yes, sir.